The sun was just peeking over the horizon, painting golden waves across my pool, when I heard it louder, splashing, and what sounded like a full-on rager in my backyard. I set down my coffee, stepped outside, and stopped dead. At least a dozen strangers from Willow Grove Estates were treating my pool like their private club. Kids launched cannonballs off my diving board, adults sprawled in my deck chairs, and someone had floated a cooler packed with beer. My jaw clenched as I took it in, my professor's instinct urging me to stay cool. "Excuse me," I called, voice steady but sharp. "This is private property. You need to leave." A woman in her 40s, flipping through a magazine, glanced over her sunglasses. "We paid our membership fees to Diane," she said, like that cleared everything up. $1, $500 for the year. Your granddad promised pool access." My brain short-circuited. Membership fees? For my pool? Before I could respond, I heard the crisp clack of heels on my deck. There she was, Diane Larson, HOA president, strutting toward me in a neon pink swimsuit that screamed money and bad taste. Her blonde hair was lacquered into a fortress, her smile sharp enough to slice steel. "Oh, Nathan," she cooed, voice oozing fake sweetness. "I see you've met our pool members. I was just coming to discuss our arrangement." My blood pressure spiked. "What arrangement?" "This is my property, Diane. My grandfather left me this ranch, pool included. I never signed up for any membership nonsense." She laughed a grating cackle that made my skin crawl. "Oh, honey, your granddad and I had a verbal deal years ago. He said the neighborhood could use the pool anytime. These folks paid 3 years upfront $45,000. I'd hate to refund all that." As she spoke, I spotted a newspaper sticking out of her beach bag, the headline half visible. Local HOA sued for environmental violations, $500,000 payout. She shoved it deeper, but not before I saw the date 6 months old. Evidence she didn't want seen. "Diane," I said, channeling every bit of authority from years of wrangling chaotic lecture halls, "I don't care what you claim my grandfather said. He died 2 years ago. This property is mine. No contract, no deal. Everyone out. Now." The pool went quiet, the only sound water lapping against the tiles. Even the kids stopped splashing, sensing the tension. Diane's smile wavered, then snapped back. She turned to the crowd, voice booming. "Pack up, everyone. Mr. Carter here's forgotten his granddad's kindness, but don't worry, you'll have your pool back in 48 hours. Trust me." She leaned in close, her perfume a mix of chlorine and arrogance. "I once took a pergola from the Wilsons. Took me 47 hours. Remember them?" "No." "Exactly." She spun on her heels, nearly slipping, and shouted, 48 hours, folks. Mark your calendars for our 4th of July blowout." As the last muttering neighbor trudged out, one kid maybe 9 flipped me off at his mom's notch. I stood there, stunned, grappling with Diane's threat. 48 hours for what? My grandfather always preached documenting everything, a habit from his engineering days when one misstep could collapse a bridge. I grabbed my phone, recording the wet footprints, upturned furniture, and stray beer cans littering my deck. "Day 1, I said to the camera, voice unsteady. Diane Larson just promised these people my pool in 48 hours. She's got $45,000 of their money. I've got a bad feeling." That night, I couldn't shake the sense that Diane held a hidden card. Her mention of the Wilsons gnawed at me. I tore through my grandfather's study, sifting through dusty files for any hint of pool agreements or HOA deals. What I found wasn't a contract, it was bigger, and it changed everything. 2 days later, I woke to 5 violation notices slapped on my front door like a suburban shaming. Typed on Willow Grove's letterhead, each was more ridiculous than the last. Grass a 1/4 inch too long, unapproved mailbox color, faint oil spot on my driveway. One claimed my pool chairs caused visual discord from the woman whose house was painted electric lime. But the last notice hit hard. Pool safety hazard. Immediate compliance required or face legal action. Diane was playing dirty, and she meant business. Furious, I dove back into my grandfather's files, pulling deeds, tax records, permits. Then I found it, tucked between 1980s surveys, a yellowed map, coffee-stained, marked with odd symbols. In the corner, my grandfather's handwriting, for my grandson. They'll choke on their greed. William Carter, 1985. My pulse raced. The symbols traced water sources, streams, a well, my pool labeled Protected Watershed Conservation Easement, 1985, in perpetuity. I didn't fully understand, but my gut screamed this was the key. I photographed every detail, locked the map in my grandfather's safe his wedding anniversary as the combo, and went full-on, legally petty. At the hardware store, I bought a heavy-duty chain, a 5-pound padlock, 10 no trespassing signs, a top-tier security camera system, and a laminator. The cashier raised an eyebrow. Neighbor issues? Something like that. I grumbled, loading my truck. Back home, I chained the pool gate like it was Fort Knox, posted a sign blaring private property. Pool closed indefinitely. Trespassers prosecuted, and stapled a laminated copy of my deed beside it, highlighting sole ownership in bold marker. I added, any legal action will be met with full enforcement of all laws and agreements. I installed cameras covering every angle, their night vision feeding to my phone. As dusk settled, I sat on my porch, watching the live feed like a sentinel. At 8 p.m., Diane's golf cart slunk up, her face lit by my new floodlights, twisted with fury as she read my sign. She yanked out her phone, gesturing wildly, then hung up and glared at the camera. Slowly, she raised 3 fingers, 1, 2, 3, and mouthed something I couldn't catch before peeling out. 3 fingers? 3 what? My phone buzzed with motion alerts. Switching to the front camera, I saw them, red and blue lights. 3 police cars rolling toward my house. Diane had called the cops over my pool. My heart pounded as I stepped outside, hands visible, praying my cameras were rolling. The lead officer, young and jittery, barked, "Mr. Nathan Carter." I nodded, as calm as I could. "Sir, we got a report of violent threats." "Turn around." "Threats?" I hadn't raised my voice. "Officer, this is a mistake. I have footage of every interaction. Want to see it?" He hesitated, but a gruff voice cut in. "Stand down, Riley." Chief Morgan, weathered and exasperated, stepped from an unmarked car. He sighed, pinching his brow. "Let me guess. Diane Larson called this in." I nodded, relief washing over me. Morgan knew Diane's reputation word was his file on her could fill a bookshelf. "She claimed you threatened her with a weapon and seized her property," he said. Crying, hyperventilating, the works. He glanced at Riley. "Notice any weapons?" "Hostages." We reviewed my footage in my living room. When Diane's 3-finger salute played, Morgan chuckled. "She staged this. Knew we'd show up. Pure theater." He handed me his card. "You're doing everything right, cameras, calm. Keep it up. If she escalates, call me, not 911. False reports are a federal crime. I'll have a chat with her." The cops left, but unease lingered. Diane wouldn't back down, she doubled down. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived from Eric Dalton, attorney at law. My hand shook as I opened it. The letter was a legal battering ram, accusing me of emotional distress and breaching community agreements, threatening a lien on my property for denying water access rights. If I didn't restore pool access in 72 hours, I'd lose everything. Water access rights, that phrase clicked. Then I remembered, Eric Dalton was Diane's nephew, fresh out of law school. I'd seen his graduation pics online, Diane grinning like she'd passed the bar herself. This was family muscle, and Eric had just made a fatal error. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, the letter taunting me. I'd spent all night scouring property law sites, but water access rights for a pool was nonsense. My coffee was cold, my eyes stung, and 72 hours had shrunk to 48. Then I thought of George Ramsey, an 87-year-old farmer who'd lived here before Willow Grove sprouted. I found him on his porch, carving what looked like a miniature scarecrow. His property was a stark contrast to Willow Grove's pristine lawn's rusted fence. And was that a still? "George," I said, handing him the letter, "Diane's trying to take my land with some water access gibberish." He read it, squinted, then burst into laughter so hard he nearly toppled over. "Oh, William, you sly genius," he wheezed, looking up. "You did it. 40 years, and it worked." He led me inside, his living room a trove of local history, old photos, brittle clippings, maps. From a creaky cabinet, he pulled a folder labeled Carter's Gambit. "Your granddad was a mastermind," he said, spreading documents like a winning hand. He knew developers or HOAs would come for his land, so he set a trap. In 1985, a conservation easement for the watershed under your property. That aquifer feeds 3 counties. He could have sold the water rights for millions, but donated them to a trust with one catch. Any legal claim on those rights triggers the kill switch. I leaned in, heart racing. Kill switch. George grinned. It voids all development agreements for properties using that watershed. Willow Grove sprinklers, fountains, pools all tied to it. One claim, and every permit, every variance gone. They'd have to tear it all down, restore the land. Costs? At least $2.5 million, maybe $5 million with fines. I gripped the table, dizzy. That's insane. There's got to be a loophole. George shook his head. Your granddad hired top environmental lawyers. It's ironclad filed with the state, EPA, even the local tribe. Eric's letter tripped it. In 36 hours, the trust gets notified, and Willow Grove's toast. He handed me a note from my grandfather. Nathan, if you're reading this, someone sprung the trap. The easement's my gift protection. Let the greedy choke. The water remembers. Stand firm. Love, Granddad William. I walked home, the letter heavy, Willow Grove's perfect lawns mocking me. Could I let a whole neighborhood burn for Diane's greed? The next 2 days were agony. I ignored Eric's letter and Diane's frantic voicemails, which hit my phone like a jackpot. Each morning, I sat by my pool, watching the sunrise, knowing an ancient aquifer was about to unleash 40 years of vengeance. My cameras caught Diane circling my gate, her golf cart leaving skid marks from angry stops. On day 3, she paraded through Willow Grove, telling neighbors I was scared and her nephew's case was airtight. A crowd cheered. One woman handed her a bouquet. That afternoon, Diane's husband, Greg, showed up at my door, looking like he'd aged a decade. Nathan, it's worse than you know, he whispered. Diane sold pool memberships to 30 families $45,000 total and blew it on that busted HOA fountain. She thinks some state law protects recreational water access. She's got 20 pages of useless case law. He handed me a list of names and payments in Diane's handwriting. She doesn't know about your granddad's trap, does she? I stayed neutral. Greg, I can't discuss that, but thanks for doing what's right. He nodded, defeated, and drove off in his own car, a quiet revolt. That night, I couldn't sleep, staring through my grandfather's telescope, wondering about the Wilsons, free from Diane's claws. The final morning dawned gray and heavy. At 9:45 a.m., my cameras caught 3 black SUVs gliding past my Housino markings, pure menace. A text from George. Bus begins. The water remembers. At 10 a.m., they stopped at Diane's garish lime house. 3 figures in black suits stepped out, led by a woman with iron gray hair. They rang Diane's bell, briefcases in hand. Diane answered in a blue power suit, smile radiant, thinking she'd won. That smile wouldn't last. Through binoculars, I watched her confidence collapse. The lead official flashed a badge, spoke briefly, and Diane's hands flew to her mouth. She pointed at my property, shaking her head, but the officials marched inside. Neighbors spilled out, golf carts clogging the streets. An hour later, the lead official, Director Laura Klein from the EPA, set up a screen on her SUV. Your HOA's legal action against the Carter Properties watershed triggered an environmental audit, she announced. Satellite images showed Willow Grove littered with red violation zones, illegal stream diversions, a hidden retention pond. A kid's voice piped up. Is that the pond where the frogs died? Klein's next slide was a death blow. $2.5 million in fines, up to $5 million 15,000 per household. The crowd exploded. That's my retirement. We'll lose everything. Diane laughed hysterically, collapsing in the street, waving an insurance policy. I planned for this. Klein shut her down. Your policy excludes intentional violations. Your own minutes show you ignored watershed warnings 3 years ago. The crowd turned ugly. Greg pushed forward, face red. I want a divorce, he declared. You knew about the easement. You said Nathan wouldn't fight. You buried us. Someone chucked a $300 flip-flop at Diane. Eric arrived, saw the chaos, and passed out on the lawn. Paramedics carted him off as someone yelled, "There goes our lawyer." Dark laughter rippled through. The next night's HOA meeting was a slaughter. The treasurer admitted they had $12,347 against $2.5 million. The richest family vowed to sell, triggering a market crash. Bankruptcy wouldn't dodge federal fines. Diane was ousted, 8-71, screaming about ingrates as mascara ran. Greg dropped a bombshell, waving easement papers he'd shown Diane years ago. She said Nathan was just a professor, too soft to fight. She was wrong. A sneaker flew. Security dragged Diane out. Eric faced bar complaints, his career dead. Within a month, Willow Grove was a ghost town. Property values cratered 70%. The pond was filled, native grasses returned, and a plaque praised my grandfather's foresight. Greg, now free, looked younger, dating an HOA skeptic. Diane lived in a trailer park, barred from starting another HOA. The EPA sent me a $50,000 grant and an Environmental Hero Award, citing my case as a precedent protecting thousands of acres. Floating in my pool, I thought of Diane's greed, her need to dominate, and how it torched everything she touched. My grandfather was right. Give the greedy rope, and they'll hang themselves. The water remembered, and justice waited 40 years to strike. Was it worth it? You tell me.